Welcome back to Season 2 of Tradies Who Lead, the podcast about everyday leadership for everyday legends in the trades. I'm Ashley Baltecki, a diesel mechanic by trade and your host. In this podcast, we hear from tradies across all industries and job titles about how they show up and take responsibility as everyday leaders so that we can learn from their experiences and level up our own practical leadership skills on site. Whether you're building personal leadership to lift your own performance or to strengthen your teams, you've come to the right place. In this episode, we dive into running a team, balancing family and business, and the leadership lessons that come from trial, error, and persistence. Today's guests are Cam and Matt, brothers-in-law turned business partners who founded Limitless Build. What started as a carpentry company focused on quality and word-of-mouth referrals has grown into a full-service building firm specializing in home extensions and a sister company, Melbourne Decks and Pergolas, which creates amazing outdoor living spaces. What makes their story stand out is that they did this without ever working in an office, instead learning on the go, building systems, and leading a team from scratch. Now, family is central to how they run their business, and they're passionate about investing in mentorship and coaching. From systems to coaching others in their business, this episode is full of great practical leadership insights. Thanks for joining me on the podcast today, Cam and Matt.
No worries. Good to see you.
Thanks for having us.
You've both been in business for over a decade. What does leadership mean to you?
I suppose for us, it's always ever changing. As we grow, we have to constantly pivot and turn to what we're doing to be good leaders. I think the best kind of leadership is making sure that you listen to your team, but you're also firm and you have like really strong foundations, like core values and everything. We've finalized a lot of our core values recently to make sure that we bring that and show the employees for every toolbox and be present and make sure that everyone knows that we're here for them as well as for us.
Yeah, I think it's just like continual improvement points. So always thinking what's next. Once we've got a system down pat, how can we improve it? So just continual improvement in every aspect of the business and sort of giving the team, like listening to them as well. So leading the team is hearing what they have to say to improve us, to improve them.
You can really hear how there's leading by example and setting standards, but then also making sure that you're not just setting a standard that doesn't resonate with your team and there's ongoing conversations there. When it comes to that leadership journey, did it start with business or did it start a little bit after or a little bit before you went into business together?
Sort of just Cam and myself. We started together, then we got on an apprentice, then we got 2 apprentices, then we got a subcontractor, and sort of just self-taught ourselves like along the way of what we need to do to keep them employed, what we need to do to keep the jobs more efficient and effective, and just grew from there and sort of just they gave us feedback as well, like, oh, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? Or what have you got in place for this problem today? I'm like, oh, we have no idea. So now we sort of, just figured it out along the way of like when a problem or issue arises, it's like, well, how can we solve it? You just self-teach. There are like coaching programs out there and different programs, just all kinds of avenues you can learn from. So I think it's network, find some programs that work for you and you just network, talk to everybody.
Is there a tool or strategy that has helped you lead effectively now that you've had some of those initial lessons and you've gone on that improvement journey and you've obviously now got a lot more experience as leaders of tradies and other people? Is there something that stands out that's like a tool or strategy that really helped you early days or that you've learned recently that has made a big difference for how you lead your team?
I think the most important thing is that everything needs to be written down. Anything that's spoken, it will just be forgotten, and you can't recant on anything that isn't written down either. So any single time that we have a conversation on site, we usually put like a brief down in a group chat that we all can see. Even the apprentices should be able to see the group chat so they can see what's going on, and everyone knows, like if someone's having a really hard day because of X, Y, and Z, it could be materials or it could be the weather or whatever, they might write it in the group chat. We have a couple of teams, so if one of them sees that there could be an extra hand needed, they can almost work it out amongst themselves as well to see who's best needed where for the day. Probably the best thing that we ever did was make sure everything's written down and also have live scheduling. So Matt put our calendar on our Google Drive so that anything that changes, even if it's in a few weeks, the boys can sort of review their schedule way early. And then at a toolbox meeting, one of them, even the apprentice can happen sometimes, they'll bring up, oh, it might be better if on that day, in that job that's in a few weeks, we have a tool, like a specific tool. It could be just forward thinking is the best thing that's helped us, I reckon.
It's interesting how you've created this very high level of visibility, not just between yourself and your teams, but your teams between each other. And it sounds like the impact of that has been that you've empowered them to make more decisions or do some more of that planning themselves. What's been the biggest improvement you've seen from that? Because I don't feel like that's a standard approach to how teams might be managed.
We say the schedule is a guide, so they could critique it any way they want. So if they think, like Cam just said before, if there's a better solution to maybe I'll go here, do this, you go there, do that, and then it makes it more efficient on site because they might know the job better, the area, they're closer to home. So they can sort of have their input of like, the schedule's a guide, but let's fine tune it this way. So it gives them a voice as well, not just say, go here, do that. They're like, oh, I might do this because I think this is a bit better. And we say, yep, sounds good. So it gives them more initiative to just improve themselves, to think ahead. And it just makes it so much easier, and it flows much easier than us just directly saying, go here, do that.
It helps better with the apprentices as well, for them to be able to see what it looks like to put in input, and then you get action out of it as well. So if you want like a future leader, I hadn't even thought about that till right now, but that's probably the best thing that we ever did. We're making them be aware of projects coming up and projects happening soon. That's probably the best thing we ever did. We didn't know we did it.
I love that reflection, because especially when it comes to understanding the big picture, I think especially for our young apprentices, if they've come straight out of school, they don't know how businesses work. They understand that they're on a learning journey to get a trade under their belt, but they don't necessarily see the big picture. So I definitely imagine that has a really big impact, that visibility for your apprentices coming into the business, and also gives like the whole team like that ability to take more accountability, and you obviously support them in their decisions. So I imagine it builds a lot of team trust as well. I know you're both really passionate about self-improvement for yourselves as leaders and business owners. What does that journey in terms of investing in your own improvement and growth look like?
Business coaching for us. So because we sort of started with nothing, we sort of thought, how can we, like, what do we do? So it's continual networking with other trades and like-minded people. Business coaching as well, to understand the numbers of the business, what everything means, having systems and processes down pat. And that sort of it opens up a can of worms. It's like once you've got one thing sorted out and completed, you're like, oh, now I need to do this, this, and this to make sure that stays steady and continually improves. And sort of, I guess you could say almost, we're trying to work to automation. So how can we have the business run itself? The weekends have like a 4-day week and play golf. Just sort of improving all the systems and processes to make it mainstream and just like flows, and everybody in the team is on the same wavelength. So it's just the want to have it flow.
Oiled machinery cogs. That's the best way to run a business.
Yeah, and to get there is just continual like chats and networking and communication with. Like you might hear something at a network event, like, oh, I might try that in my business. And then you're like, where do you find that program? Or how do you find this program? And you can hear it in like real terms from other people using it, and then test and measuring it. And then we can try and adapt it to our business. And if it works, it's great. If not, well, at least we tried something else.
I used to talk a lot about the fact that when it comes to other people, like anyone can be a teacher, and that networking piece, I imagine, is that kind of vehicle for yourselves, that you can learn from other people's experiences, things that maybe not to do or to try. And there's obviously an experimentation piece in terms of what works for your team and your business and your leadership styles. Coming from being on the tools for yourselves and then transitioning into an environment where you're a lot more office-based and your performance is more about how your team's performing and not your direct day-to-day, or how many jobs did I get done today, how I'm getting paid per hour, did I make sure I didn't make any mistakes and I'm meeting all my personal KPIs. What was the biggest lesson you learned from that transition off the tools into the office for yourselves?
Probably the headspace. It's really hard to go off the tools and be in the office and still feel like you've had a rewarding day. Because if you came from carpentry, you'll finish a certain amount of tasks a day. You'll finish hanging a door, arc it and everything, and you get like the instant satisfaction, the dopamine hit of finishing a task, and you get to see a completed project, and then you move on to the next. But working from behind a laptop is not as rewarding, but it is really nice. I think what gets me over the line is when you actually go out on site and you get to see what you were envisioning being created by your team. So everything that you're putting out there is getting built the same way that you would have done it, but now it's getting pushed out at a better volume, probably, and honestly, like sometimes a better quality as well. not to say that I'm not a good chippy, but I do have really good chippies underneath me. I think the headspace of finding your rewards through your team's achievements, that's where it all sits.
I reckon a big one will be being okay with what I do today will take into effect in 1 month, 2 months next year. What we're trying to do today is no instant reward. It's working to an end, which will happen much, much later, and being okay with that. You think, oh, what have I done today? I've done a lot of stuff, but I don't feel like I've achieved anything, but we actually have. It's just not instant satisfaction.
I know I struggled the same when I came off the tools because, I wouldn't get 4 or 5 different services done or 4 or 5 different repairs on site done. I was suddenly managing an apprentice program, which was an extremely slow burn. And my solution was to have an obnoxious to-do list. But I really like that there's that mindset shift of going, how can you recognize the success of your team as reflecting the efforts that you've put in part of managing that team and managing the business. I imagine when it comes to doing a lot of activities that have a delayed result or a delayed impact, is there a way that you're measuring your inputs to support that continuous improvement and have that positive trend within your team? Or is it kind of just you deal with each day as it comes?
What we do is it's almost like reactive at the moment. We'll have a toolbox. We go over everything that we did last time at the toolbox. Then we go over our projects coming up, and then we go over any issues that any of the team came up with. And then on the spot, we'll go, okay, cool. How can we fix this? Okay, cool. We've written it all down. It's all written down in toolbox notes, and then we'll action it over the next 2 weeks. That's the easiest way to do it. Just constantly reflecting on how everything is working, how everything's moving together. A lot of the time, the stuff that we fix usually comes from all the way down from the apprentices, because they're the ones who, they're the chump change, who the qualifiers will get to do some harder, like menial tasks. And they go, this could have been sorted out differently, I think, from this. And then you go, okay, cool. Why didn't we do that? Let's do that next time. We'll be more organized. And I think that's the only way to do it, though. You just have to constantly reflect. Otherwise, if I'm just doing stuff because I think it's going to be better, like on what grounds? Don't change what is already working for the boys. Fix what isn't.
And sort of like back costing the jobs as well. So once we've allocated, say, 2 qualifieds and an apprentice to a job. Once the job finishes up, we write down how many days they were there for in hours. So if it's like 7 days, we'll add 5. We can sort of say, well, why did it take so long? And they can say, well, materials were delayed or details weren't very accurate. So we can sort of look into the job and say, okay, well, it blew out because X, Y, Z. Maybe next job, let's improve on that. Or it could be we've allocated 5, finish it in 4. Like, how'd you finish the day earlier? Great. And we can sort of deep dive into that. Back custom job is really good because it shows budget versus what actually happened.
And it sounds like the really key part of that is just a whole heap of information gathering that allows you to make really informed choices, that your budget might be what it should be or what you expect it to be. And then it's going, well, let me actually cross-reference that budget versus reality. And that's information, good or bad, information that you then get to work with to find opportunities to improve or find things that are already working really well.
Yeah, I think like the best thing that we do is ask our boys what they're capable of for the more complicated quotes as well. Like we've got a job coming up soon where there's only one access in and out of the backyard. It's very tight. So we'll probably have to get a machine in there. And then I spoke to one of the boys who used a small demolition rubbish removal machine. They said don't put anyone there. Just have the machine there and one guy. Otherwise it'll be too hard to work around him. And that was the best thing that we could have done, because otherwise it would have scheduled way incorrectly. I would have quoted incorrectly. So the team's also our guideline for projects.
I have experienced it myself in the trade, and I feel like it's a conversation that's come up quite a few times on this podcast around that there's this idea that as leaders or bosses or supervisors that we have to have all the answers figured out. But obviously it sounds like that's something that you're both pretty comfortable with going, I'm not sure what the best thing to do is here. You have experience in this and you're happy to learn from your teams. Where did that come from? Was that something that you've learnt, or was that kind of a mindset that you've always had?
Yeah, I think that's sort of self-taught, because we always say before you give us a ring with a problem on site, think of 2 solutions and then give us a call and we'll go through it together. So they've already they've thought, here's a problem, I can fix it by doing this or this. And then they call us and say, this has happened, I reckon this. And we're like, okay, I know what you're getting at. Have you tried this or this or this? So sort of giving them the chance to have a go at it first rather than just getting the answer straight away. So they're actually thinking about the problem to be solved, not just, I've got a problem, I can't do it.
That's awesome. I definitely know that, and I imagine you had leaders throughout your time as well, that you had leaders who kind of just gave you the answers, which was great when I guess you maybe didn't want to have to make a decision and take on the risk, but it often slows us down a lot in our role when we're not able to make those critical decisions or think of things critically ourselves. What would be your top tips for tradies who are transitioning from being on the tools to running a business for themselves?
If you're still a subby working with some people who already own a company, you should ask all of them like what their tips would be, which the first one's got to be obviously finance. So make sure that you have enough money backing you at the very start, and you don't have to have a lot, but just make sure you got enough to do some small jobs at the start if you're starting from scratch. Make sure you got everything set up for your business as a sole proprietor or whatever you want to do. If you're a sole trader, make sure you have a bookkeeper. That's probably, or at least make sure you have some sort of advice before going into it, because it's going to suck up all your time. I think making sure all the back end is sorted so you can go out and you can just concentrate on doing the work is probably the best thing I could tell someone to do. Make sure that when you're looking at jobs, you're quoting and thinking about everything, not just it's going to take me 8 hours to do this. Make sure you factor in, are you doing pickup materials? Have you got enough materials? Have you got enough wastage on your materials quote? You got to think about everything. I would probably start off by just doing some hourly work out of my own first to make sure I can get my bearings and see how much jobs sort of cost when I'm doing them, because everyone's different. You might have someone who's really, really, really slow and has to quote for that because they're too slow, but obviously they're not always going to get the job either. You might have someone really quick and is able to be more competitive because they're really good and they got systems down pat as well. So yeah, probably know where you sit as a good carpenter so you can quote for yourself to actually still live your life and run a business, because a lot of people lose their lives when they run the business. Business coaching as well for us was a game changer. So once we started developing our company a bit more, the company is like our baby. It's super important to us, and we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing by our company all the time, which meant doing the right thing by our employees. And you get soaked up into all these tiny little issues all the time when you're running a company. It soaks up all your time and you can't do anything that you said you were going to do. And then when we did business coaching, they really taught us how to break everything down. Small steps turn into huge leaps. That business coaching, once you start to want to grow a team, that should be your biggest priority. Having someone teach you how to run a company, because we're all just carpenters or plumbers or whatever at the end of the day. We're not business owners. We have to teach ourselves. You need someone backing you.
It was a good segue, obviously the golf comment, but also then in terms of the business advice, to be mindful of how to go into business without giving up everything else that you have in your life, because we're more than just our job. We're more than just our business. How do you navigate balancing your personal lives and family lives around being business owners when there can be so much emotional workload looking after people, and obviously a lot of slow burn systems admin work that you do keeping things moving?
That's one of our company values, is more than a project, which is like the day-to-day can be quite intense, but it's not just a job we're doing. We're here for a reason, pulling together, learning to switch off. So get home from work and allow yourself maybe half hour to finalise the day, finalise the emails, but then turn your phone off and switch off so you can be home with the family. I don't do that all that much. Like, I still read emails, I still respond to stuff just because doesn't bother me. But you have to learn to switch off when you need to switch off and give the family your attention. Like Cam and I bounce a lot of ideas off each other. You all talk about similar things and you sort of like, I'll try this, I'll try that. So I think if you're all in the same wavelength and the same balance, then it's the ease with that, and it flows after that, I guess. I don't know, there's a lot to it, but what do you reckon?
Balancing family is probably the hardest thing you're ever going to do in your business, because they want you more than you even have time to give yourself, and you need to make that space to be able to give them the father that they want or the mum that they want, depending who you are. I sort of make sure that I am available no matter what from X time to X time at night time. So I'll make sure I'm always available between 5:30 and 7 to do all the stuff with the kids, make sure the homework's all sorted, bath time, stories. Make sure that no matter what, every single night I read the story to all my kids. And then that way, at least the worst case that's going to happen in an hour and a half is you get a text message saying something stuffed up for tomorrow, delivery, whatever. I can write back after that. I can just write a text message after that. That hour and a half, though, you'll never get it back if you don't give it out.
It's obviously quite complex, and every family and business dynamic's going to be a bit different, but it definitely sounds like that figuring out what that system is for you and communicating that with all the stakeholders, whether that's your family or your business, and then having boundaries and routines that kind of help you have some systemization, and so it becomes a bit more natural when it flows, because there is kind of a framework to work around that suits yourselves and your family, and the dynamic is at the foundation. And obviously that's going to be really unique for every single person in terms of their business or family journey.
Yeah. Well, it also comes down to if you're putting like maximum effort into your business and your partner and your kids see that, where do they sit in your radar of what's important? Because if you can't put that into your family either, they would be like, well, obviously I'm not as important as your business, which is, that's not the story you should be painting. It should be everything's important. The business works for the family is working well because of the business, all like that.
An easy way to do it is you schedule your business and your team, schedule your own life outside of hours too. So, right, you might say Mondays to Fridays is 2 hours of my phone is turned off and I'm doing bike rides or ball sports. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it could be 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. I'm doing whatever it is. So that way, when things pop up, it's like, oh no, I've allocated this time for that task. I don't feel bad not doing it today because I'm going to do it tomorrow. So I think time blocking yourself is really important for in the business and outside the business.
I love that because I'm a massive time blocker. I've definitely leaned into it more this year. Now, the final question I ask all my guests is, what is your number one tip for listeners about how they can show up as everyday leaders, whether they are that apprentice, they're that subby on the tools, or they've been in business for a long time?
Make it fun. Like, business is pretty intense and stressful, so you've got to have some outs and some fun. So take your team out, reward them, look after them. If you just do the 7 to 3:30 day in, day out, with no sort of like, let's take a day off and play golf, or let's take a day off and just have a bit of fun, and have your systems and processes down pat, and just know when to have a rest and reward yourself and the team for all the efforts they do day in, day out. So have that, like, give yourself a pat on the shoulder.
That's what I was going to say. Appreciate what you've done and what everyone's been doing. Otherwise, you're just getting stuck working up. Yeah, exactly what he said. You're just showing up from 7 to 3:30. Make sure there's like a little bit of vision into what the next 5 years looks like, and make sure your team know that.
Yeah, the power of a pause, whether that's to self-reflect, to plan ahead, or take that moment to reflect or enjoy yourselves, is super important. Thank you so much for everything you've shared on the podcast today, Cam and Matt. I'm sure business owners who aren't at your level and are hoping to be at your level will have learned a lot from your journey and what you've shared. And obviously, staying connected through the network, they might come across you, getting to know other tradies and other trade business owners.
No worries. Thanks for having us.
If you enjoyed today's chat with Cam and Matt, make sure you subscribe to Tradies Who Lead and follow us on socials for more content from the podcast. Thanks for joining me for the opening episode of Season 2. We'll be back with another everyday legend in 2 weeks.